I think there should be a better pause at this like part of the cutscene, and then.
Oh yeah, I remember that pause. That was a good pause. It was a good enough pause that I remember the pause. I am Amanda End. I was, I guess, primarily an engineer on the project, but there was actually somewhat like low bar for engineering on this one, so I think I almost did a lot more implementing than I did anything else, and I don't know what you'd call that. The implementer.
The developer. You developed
Sure, I developed it. I developed a large portion of the game.
Mm-hmm. I'm Auston Montville. I helped out. I wrote a lot of code, but it wasn't a lot of code. Like, I felt like I got to come in at the end. Like, wow, this thing's like basically done. Oh yeah, I'll touch up a little thing here, put in a little menu here. Like, it was all just like very small details.
So I technically came onto SDM like almost 2 years ago now. And it was in a weird state then where like only Patrick was working on it, and he was like, can you make this one? It was a system for you to be able to interact with devices like phones and stuff like that, and I made a disturbingly over-engineered like browsing system for all of the OSs and all of the things, because that's what he'd wanted at the time, and I'm so happy that none of that got used, because it was just like 30 layout groups just shoved together, and you could, I loved it at the time, and it probably wasn't that bad, but then the project went on hiatus for a little bit, and when I came back, I was like, oh, I hate this. This is way over. We don't need this. It's like, basically, we want to just, open up and look at the phone and like just be able to do what you want to do, not have to figure out how to work a new operating system. And luckily, Patrick was like, yeah, we should just get rid of it. And it's a weird feeling to be happy to get rid of some of your own code. You're like, I spent weeks on that. Let's delete it, please, because I don't like it anymore. When I say I spent most of my time implementing, like, I really mean that. Like, a lot of the engineering was done, and it's honestly a rather simple game. The graphics stuff was probably the most complex, but the rest of it is piped through Fungus, which is like a narrative plugin where you actually get like a graph node, and you can set things up with a series of commands without any programming, and our lead engineer, CJ, had already hooked everything up to work and set everything up, so we didn't really need to do much engineering. It was mostly just extending some of the stuff that he'd already done, so all of my work for like months was just taking what Sean had written and implementing it into the game and adding any new artwork or anything like that, which is honestly a really, really satisfying job to do. But like, I got to be the first person that watched the scene play out with its visuals and everything. And I did try to like not read it too much as I was putting it in the scene, so that like when I watched it the first time, and there were a couple scenes where I caught a few words and I was like, oh no, this is gonna be sad. This is gonna be really sad. And I would be here possibly by myself, and I'm just like, this is so sad.
I have worked 3 different jobs over the course of this game's development, because I wasn't anywhere near to being part of Galvanic Games when development started on it. I remember I went to one of the show and tell events at the Portland Indie Game, like the Pig Squad, the Portland Indie Gaming, independent gaming group, and CJ and Patrick, no, it was just CJ that was there, actually, I think, and they were showing off this cool tech demo for some narrative game that they were working on, and it was Professor Zay, like, in the, like, one of the original rooms of the couch, and, like, walk around, you can see the whole lighting, so I was like, wow, this is some really cool, like, lighting tech, and like, yeah, we got these ideas, we want to do this and that, and it's like, but there was, like, no content at all, right? Mm-hmm. So that was long ago when I was, like, working independent, doing my own stuff, and then, like, yeah, there was a whole bunch of time that I joined Galvanic, and I worked on another game, and then I got to, like, jump in on this, and so I was really fortunate, because I didn't even start working on it until the script had been completely rewritten, so my first experience was actually playing the game, the first draft of it, and I don't know, you might want to like cut this out of it, but
you got a massive amount of feedback.
Yeah.
My precious.
So like,
I don't like it.
I very much was like, because I don't know Sean. I didn't know sort of his writing or anything, and I like...
You knew me enough. We worked together months.
Yeah, but like it wasn't in the context of like the narrative designer, right?
Yeah.
And so like I often have trouble with stories in video games. A lot of them are like, kind of simple or like not well thought out or there's lots of issues, right? There's good games and, bad games and everything like that. So I was super skeptical coming to this. I'm like, all right, let's see how this story is. And, I'm playing it and I'm like, oh, all right, that's pretty good. And I'm like, oh, that's clever. And like, all right, and of course I'm taking lots of notes. Like, oh, that's a dumb, it doesn't make sense. But like, then like, it was when you get to one of the optional scenes, when you go to the to Rick's grandfather's office and you get to play out the memory when like he sees the baby for the first time. He's really upset that all of a sudden he like changes his whole demeanor and like and just like I like teared up a little bit and I was like, damn it, this is pretty good. So I'm glad that I really enjoyed the story and I hope I didn't hold back at all of the feedback, and I noticed some things are changing every time something came in. I was like, it was like I had a good idea, right? Like I am not a writer in the slightest. That is not a skill that I have, unless it's writing in C# or something. Mm-hmm. So when I give feedback and I see it pop in the game, I'm like, oh, that's cool. I gave an idea that was vetted by the actual writer, like someone who knows what they're doing.
I remember that day. I remember looking over to you playing and seeing your second monitor with the Sublime open or whatever, and just seeing all of the notes and thinking, oh boy.
It was a long list.
It was like, Auston has feelings about this game.
Yeah.
Controls.
Oh yeah.
Controls are always the worst.
Controls and localization. So there was some fun stuff with the localization where to save time we ended up making everything draw from our localization file, and we were using like i2 localization. And and well, it seemed like a pretty good call to me. And i2 localization has this feature on it that says like to merge. Which, we do merging all the time. Git does merging. That makes sense. It turns out that merge function does not do what you think it does. I can't even remember how it works, but it certainly is not very smart about merging. And what I ended up having to do was make it so that I forced it to be in some sorted order because i2 localization doesn't really care what order anything is. And if I forced an order, then we could manually merge it and everything was fine. But for a little while there, Sean may have lost some work.
Yeah, we'd be doing a run through the game, just like, hey, Commander isn't saying anything here.
Controls and the remapping stuff and localization, I think those were the two biggest headaches that we faced.
Yeah, so like, controls are always an impossible problem because like, especially if you're making a game on PC, like you have no idea what controller person has, and they've used their controller with other games they paid for, right? It should work on everything. If you have an Xbox controller, it's like, oh, that should be the A button. If you have a PlayStation controller, that should be the X button. If you have a, I don't know, Logitech Wingmaster, whatever the hell, maybe it's the flip switch or something. And yeah, we don't have graphics for all those, although there is a pack that's like, hey, here's a bunch of open source like graphics for you game developers. Like, I know this is a huge pain. We'll take care of it. It was like awesome. I like spent like a day, maybe two, coding the system that could like take that input, read the actual like, okay, what is the controller? What is it actual? Like, it's a generic universal ID. Get the right button. Sweet, we'll pop up the graphic. And there was this problem. Everything was getting registered as an Xbox game controller. So no matter what I plugged in, it was always Xbox 360 controller. Like, not even Xbox One, it was always Xbox 360 controller. And because of the controller suite that we're using, and because of the latest updates in the Windows environment, it was, nope, it just recognizes it, and you don't know what they have. Now that's cool, because that means no matter what controller you plug in on Windows, Microsoft guarantees it works. Mm-hmm. But Microsoft is like, but I'm not going to tell you what it is, Mr. Developer. So we took a line, I heavily influenced the artists to allow us to do a thing where we took the idea from the Switch, where they have the 4 buttons, and it's just the top button or the bottom button, but you show all 4 of them. And so no matter what controller you have, we assume you have 4 face buttons on it, and then we show that button for it. So if you ever wonder why your favorite game doesn't just implement controller remapping, it's because it's a huge nightmare on PC. Although console is a little bit easier because you have a limited amount of inputs, but it's still like, what third-party controller is someone going to purchase and your game's not going to support? It's going to be a pain.
Oh no, Noodles! Are you going to let Noodles in?
Oh, hold on. Yeah, there's Noodles. Let's show a representation.
Oh yeah.
Where is he?
Oh, yeah.
He's in the library.
He's to the right.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. Look at that charming young.
That's Noodles and Pongo.
Yep. Look at it. Aw, so handsome.
He's not snaggling his tooth very hard right now, but he usually does, and that's why he has a pretty good snaggle tooth in that.
So these pictures here, they weren't originally Noodles and Pongo. Those were some of the last drawings we had. Actually, all of the paintings are, well, there's references all over this game. But there's a limit to how many references we could include in the game. We went out and tried to so there's references of other media, because this game's really about like memories and like especially a lot of the media that was really important to the inspirations of the story, like old games and old movies and old music. And so there's references all over the place. We can get away with a lot of it in text, but it gets a little more dicey legally when you start representing it visually. And so one of the images we had that we argued about a lot was an image of a squid, but it was a white squid with a little black mask, and that would attack plumbers. Could we fit that in? And we might have been able to, and it might have been cool, right? And especially we're on Switch, right? All buddies, but it might not have been, and we're like, we just don't want to deal with that risk. So instead of a squid, we have Pongo and Noodles. Do you remember we had a long discussion about the alligator and how it got into this room? I'm constantly pestering the team with these things. And in this scene, during the memory, the alligator bursts through the wall, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's a giant fight scene. And you're like, okay, well, that's not real because that's obviously the grandfather didn't, turn into a massive battle warrior and, fight this alligator. But the skeleton is actually on the table, which means the alligator got into the house, right? But the wall isn't broken. So the alligator didn't break in the wall. So how did the alligator get in here? And that was yeah, sorry, I get really excited about this whole concept.
That was a long conversation.
It was such a long conversation. We were like, did he come in through the hole in the wall? But did the house fell at some point? When did the house fall? Was it underneath there beforehand? Did the alligator get stuck in here? Were the doors locked beforehand? Was there power on? There was this whole thing, and I don't even remember where.
I don't either. I was causing a fuss because I thought we should replace the window with the broken one. But they're like, maybe that's not how I got in there. Someone said maybe he fell from the ceiling, and then where's the hole? Where's the hole in the ceiling?
Yeah, and there's debris, so maybe there was. But you'd have to be able to get up there on the other floor,
which I know what's above there. There's no hole.
Yeah, right. So, but yeah, we would take that level of scrutiny, and we can't always deliver on that level of scrutiny, right? We only had so much time at the end, and there was lots of changes in the story, and we feel we could, but I feel like we have gone over the game with a fine-tooth comb, and we try to at least think about everything. So I really enjoy the Harvey Pewters. Particularly, I enjoyed the ones that never made it into the game. Because I'm pretty sure this part doesn't make it. There was one part, I hope you remember exactly what it said, but there's a part where Harvey Pewter faces off against Hackmaster X in the final book. I think this is the last one. This was an earlier version. This one didn't make it to the game. Where Hackmaster X does this anime-like transformation, and it talks about his like bulging
sensual.
muscles ripping through the shirt as they're about to do like a code duel, and that was.
There was a fedora. Oh.
Yes, there was a fedora. Yeah, the long waving hair. Oh man.
Is that version?
It's not.
Okay,
No.
that's
No, that
a shame.
one got
It was
from it.
definitely like when you read it, you got the impression like. No offense to either you, Patrick, but like, because it's like it's weird because it's a sub-writer, right? Because it's not a book you've written; it's a book that you wrote that someone else wrote, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like that, you got the impression that the author was like a total nerd, and like the Ready Player One author, where they were like writing like a nerd's impression of God.
Yeah.
I think I can overlay the text.
Oh,
I have it.
Oh boy, yeah.
I'll put it in the video.
Please enjoy this sweet, sweet delicacy of the world of Harvey Pewter. All the characters have voices, but like, you know, we don't have the budget for voice acting, and so, you know, Matt was able to put together this idea of like, you'd hear these voices, I have no idea how he did it, but like, each character has their own distinct voice, and when you hear it, you recognize their voice, which is cool because when you don't know who the character is, and you hear that voice, it's actually connected to stuff. So if you pay attention to the voice, like the dialogue audio in the game, you can potentially figure out some things before they're revealed.
I really appreciated that when it came time to do Infinihome, you know, this stereotypical, like, home voice assistant thing is very feminine. And he decided to take another take where he did it like kind of a dopey masculine voice. But my favorite thing was that he said he wanted to kind of base it off of, like, Richard Kind. And he was like wonderfully apex dopey. I love his voice. So I was really appreciative that he was trying a different tack with this Infinihome that, you know, is supposed to be an early representation of like AI. Like. I do really love the game, and I hope that it does well. I know it's terrifying because I know games like this have a tendency to be I don't want to say low impact, but low reach maybe. So I hope it gets the love it deserves because I put a lot of love into it.
I'm super proud to have this game like that I got to contribute. It's a game without violence. It talks about a lot of really interesting concepts. Of course, you know, there's always things that like, oh, if we had more time, if we had more like iteration, we could do more stuff. But like, no, like I'm super proud of this. And like already one of our first like previews was this YouTuber that gave a review on it and literally like hits everything we were trying to achieve with the game. So like, no, we're good. Like if that happened for that person, it's going to happen to a few more. So the people that do experience that enjoy these types of things, like I think they'll enjoy their time spent with the Professor and the Commander. So this is a thing that you should absolutely never do in the game, which is that after you save back, you should never actually go right here and hit this button. Yeah.